more importantly, we got to see Jeremy Sochan at point guard.
Yeah.
I know he's still listed as a forward, et cetera, et cetera. They'll probably still list him as a forward, even if the starting lineup ends up being Jeremy, Keldon, Devin, who am I forgetting?
Wemby and Zach.
Yeah, there you go. Like I said, that he'll probably still be listed as a forward then, but it's obvious that he was taking the duties of the point guard position in this game. I know only 3 assists, but that's not really the nature of the Spurs offense, as you just alluded to, like wondering if it's 2014. It's more about him bringing the ball up the floor and setting up the sets for the offense. What were your thoughts on what you saw from him kind of in that point guard position, if you will, even though he's still a very versatile player who guards multiple positions and will sometimes get it in the post. But like, as we're seeing with this positionless offense and the way that they're going to run, unless Trey Jones is out there, it's probably going to be Jeremy or Malachi. I mean, I'm sure we'll see Devin and Keldon take it up too, but I think other than Trey, it's probably going to be Jeremy the most taking the ball up the floor and like calling sets and stuff.
Yeah, they asked Devin about it, and he said that at times Jeremy would just literally forget that he was the point guard, and they'd be like, "Jeremy, go get the ball, like you're bringing it up the floor." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. That's what I'm doing." So obviously, there's going to be some learning curves, and I think that they're clearly, kind of the weaknesses, if you will, that we talked about at him playing point guard, were Miami attempted to take advantage of those weaknesses by pressuring him the entire time. Because his handle is still not, the greatest in the world. He's obviously 6'9", so at times it can get loosey goosey. But even still, incredibly intellectual player. Pop trusts him. He's called him a point guard many times. He's played point guard at Baylor. He had times where he played it last year. An underrated playmaker. I think that with his size and his strength, he could kind of play a little bit like Josh Giddey does for OKC, in the sense that just matchup wise, he's going to have the advantage offensively, where he can post up smaller defenders and play make out of the post. He can set screens for Devin, and they can do like a 1-2 screen and roll, which would just be impossible to guard because of their size mismatch. Obviously, like I said, where he will struggle is not having the greatest handle in the world. I don't think he's like Josh Giddey in the sense that Josh Giddey can get like 15 assists a game. Like that's just his play style. I don't think Jeremy will be that way. But quite frankly, I don't think anybody on our team can be that way because of, like you said, how he played the game. And because offensively, he'll bring it up and almost immediately get rid of it.
Right.
But that's every point guard we've ever had, even Tony. Like that's just for like how we've always played. So I thought it was nice. Moving forward defensively, obviously it's going to be an improvement. There will be times where it's hard to watch, but that's just going to be the nature of the season.
Yeah, I think, there was a quote from Zach that I saw on Twitter today, actually. I believe it was from Paul Garcia. It might have been from somebody else. But it was just a quote from his press conference. It's probably on the Spurs YouTube. But he was talking about how just, it was once again on this topic. And he was just saying, we're going to kind of be like point guard by committee.
Yeah.
And it's just more to the point of like, we have multiple guys who can bring the ball up the floor. And it's really more about the way that we're going to play offense. Like you just said, even when Tony got it, he would dump it off to somebody and then maybe he'd be running off a screen, or cutting to the basket off a screen, or whatever play we were running. Like when you look back at Tony, you think about 20 points per game. You don't think about 15 assists,
Yep.
I don't know if we'll ever have like a Chris Paul type, point guard, in this Spurs offense, as long as, the lineage of Pop and RC are here, just because of the emphasis on moving the ball and being a willing passer. We just straight up, we don't care about stats. We don't care about just having, a pure point guard. And I know there's a lot of discussion. I've seen a lot of that kind of just in the Spurs fan base as well. Maybe not necessarily like our fan base, but just in the Spurs Twitterverse, I've seen a lot of conversations about like still needing another point guard. And I understand where people are coming from, but I think the thing that they also need to realize is, regardless of what they want, like the Spurs are going to do, they're going to go in the direction that they have set. And I think it seems very obvious, as they've been mentioning for a while in interviews from Brian Wright, and the decisions that they've made with the roster, like to not get another point guard this summer. And on top of that, we haven't even talked about Blake. We do still have Blake Wesley. Like, I think we forget about that a lot. And as much as he's still a young developing player, he's still on his rookie contract and has 2 more years left and is 20 years old.
Hmm.
So with the continued development of that, maybe next season he's a rotational guy for us. Maybe he's not. We'll have to see. But the point is here, we're going in a positionless direction. And I think it's pretty obvious to anybody who's watched this team like over the past 2 seasons at least, and really the past 3 seasons, our best 5 players, just bluntly, are Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sochan, Victor Wembanyama, and Zach Collins. And I guess maybe if you wanted to take Zach out and like throw in Malachi or something, I get it. But like, I think right now, though, those are pretty set as our best 5 guys on the team. And also our most experienced. Well, not Wembanyama, but he's different. He's an asterisk
Yeah,
to everything. And at least he kind of does have pro experience. You know what I mean?
true.
Um, but yeah, other than that, they're by far our 5 most. I think that's just our 5 most talented guys.
Absolutely. And defensively, it's like immediately probably our best defensive lineup is having those 5 guys out there. And I do think it actually helps Trey Jones a little bit to come off the bench because it allows Trey to be an instant spark plug and it gives him the reins to kind of, okay, here's the ball, Trey. Go make everything happen for everybody on the court. And I think that that's what we saw in this game. He had 4 steals, 5 assists, and 8 points. Like, that's a really, really solid performance from Trey Jones off the bench. And you mentioned Blake. Blake had plus 14 in the box score at
Mm-hmm.
8 points. Like, not the greatest statistical night for him, but efficient, 2 for 3, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Like,
Led the fourth quarter takeover. I know it's
yeah,
against a bunch of, a bunch of guys like that, but for Blake, that's what he should do against those type of guys for where he's at.
and he's talked about how he's slowed down and tried to make better decisions and just kind of let the game come to him. And I think that that has opened up everything for a young Blake Wesley. And defensively, he is getting after it. To me, that has clearly been his emphasis is like, how am I going to get minutes defensively? He has continued to pick up guys full court in the past couple games.
Yeah.
As well as in summer league too. He was picking guys up full court every single time. So shout out to him. He's trying to prove to us as well as the
Mm-hmm.
rest of Spurs fandom that we don't necessarily need to go draft another point guard. We have a point guard just kind of resting on the bench right now.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting to watch Blake's development this season, how much he's in Austin, all that type of stuff. But one more note on that 5 that we were talking about. You mentioned it defensively. That's the key there because Jeremy or Devin can take it up and set up the offense. Even Keldon can. Wemby can. I mean, like, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Those are the offense can be set up and run by any of those guys. So when you have that scenario, and then you can make, you can have a defensive lineup where everybody's at least 6'5", 6'6", like that really will put a strain on some of the offenses we play. Once again, there's still going to be a lot of games that we lose, but at the same time, it's going to be, I mean, that is going to be different than as much as it's going to be different than last year's lineup to put it bluntly. And I don't want to take this moment to crap on Trey because that's not what I'm trying to do at all. Because I completely agree with what you just said. And I've mentioned it in other episodes that I think whoever gets moved to the bench will benefit from it because they won't be having to go up against the starters anymore and we'll get to showcase even more of what they have. I think Trey would honestly gain the most out of that of the 3 guys we talked about potentially moving to the bench. So I think, he's going to have, I think if he comes off the bench, he's going to have his best season of his career. I think even regardless, just because of the situation and the talent that we have on the roster, he's headed that direction. But with that being said, last season we saw him got taken advantage a lot defensively a lot. I know I said a lot twice there, but you know what I'm saying. And
For
and
sure.
and so we will be a better defensive team with with Jeremy and Wemby on the floor, taking Trey out, if you get what I'm saying there.
1,000%. And it's no fault of his own. He's a smart defender. He's a capable
He's
defender.
6'1". Like
He's
that's
six
the
one.
other thing.
That's all it is. He's 6'1".
Yeah. There were like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Let's think about that, right?
Yeah.
All-star player, 6'6". There's sometimes where Trey's doing great defense, but the wingspan's just going to be too much. And we're seeing more and more of that
Mm-hmm.
around the league. And that's another thing that ties into that 5.